Hey everyone, and how's it going? BowserTheHealer here, and here is the interface control add-ons Weakauras video. I usually like to do this once a season, and it's time. I'm getting a lot of comments of people saying, what's that Weakauras and how do you do that? So I'm gonna go over all of it today in this video. I'm gonna have links down below to hopefully everything, but if I miss something, feel free to hit me up and I'll add it into this video description so you guys can always find it. I think the biggest flex of my life is that if I type Bowser interface into Google, I find my video whenever I need to like re-import something, which is a strange flex, but it makes me very happy. So let's get into it. If you like healing content, you know what to do. Hit the subscribe button and let's dive into it. First things first, a lot of what you see here is actually just default UI. Don't mind the mouse cursor or details over here, but a lot of this is just edit mode, quite literally. So I moved the debuffs and buffs from up here down to here because I kind of like the Weakauras packs that people come up with. If you've ever seen the icons and bars some players have that kind of tells them all their abilities and cooldowns, I like that, but I want that to be more visible. And that's something I found I didn't really like about a lot of the Weakauras packs, was that they got in the way of my gameplay a little bit. And more importantly, I sometimes just like watching my characters dance and whatnot. So I wanted something that was a little out of the way, but still presented that information. So having like buffs and debuffs up here was just way too much eye strain to go from health bars over here to enemies on screen to cooldowns down here. To fire your eyes up here to check a debuff takes you very far away from the action. So I wanted to reduce that. These are raid style frames. If you're trying to figure out how to get these, you can also just import the whole layout if you like it. But there's a couple of very important options I want to go over. First things first, type buff into the search bar, show debuffs on, but display only dispellable debuffs off. This is good for seeing things such as bursting and bleeds and poisons and diseases when you can't necessarily manage it, so that you know it's happening, which I think is a very important thing as a healer, and it lets me see everything. Also, Blizzard has some sort of smart display where it'll remove certain debuffs. Like if you have exhaustion from Bloodlust or Fury of the Aspects or something, it'll actually tell you that like you have that debuff in certain places, but if you're in combat or mid dungeon, it doesn't tell you that you're all exhausted in the middle of combat. It'll get rid of it because it's useless to know that in the middle of combat. The next option I really recommend is power bars. This will allow you to see mana bars and whatnot on your teammates. Incredibly useful for people trying to learn how to heal DKs. Seeing their runic power is a very important part of helping them, and so this can really ease the burden of healing a Death Knight if you're not used to healing one. So highly recommend you grab one of these. The other trick to healing Death Knights is OmniCD, but more on that one later. I also like class colors because I like glancing and going, we have a battle res, we have a battle res, we have a bloodlust, we have PI, sweet, right? Like I see that, I like look down my list and I'm like, hey, that's cool, those are the buffs we have. Or if I see like 3 monks in my party, I'm like, okay, I have 3 poison disease dispels. Excellent. That's the kind of information I like to know by just glancing. So I really like that one. If you want health on the health bars, which is what I have running most of the time in any of the gameplay you see on screen, and that's going to be this one right here, display health text, and you can make it percentages, lost health or remaining health, or keep it nice and clean if you prefer. Also, just as a PSA, if you haven't like set up pings for yourself, I highly recommend that you learn how to use the ping system. It's very cool. It allows you to tell people what you're up to and where you're going and what to do. It can be used to troll people a little bit, but I found in dungeons it has saved my buns a ton, and it's helped a lot of players figure out where we're going and what we're doing with even language barriers. So I highly recommend you learn how to use ping and you bind it somewhere useful. Mine's currently bound to B, which none of you are going to like because that's normally the bag button, and let me tell you, the amount of times I try to open my bag and I go is painful. So take some time to unlearn those habits. So that's most of the interface. You'll see it as we go. I really like it a lot myself, but if you want to replace parts of it with say a Weakauras pack or something, I recommend you do. Not every interface is going to work for everyone. One final note before I get to add-ons. My monitor's 1080p, 144 hertz in case you're wondering, but it's also very close to my face, and that none of the computer screen when I'm staring at the center of the monitor is out of my periphery. I can kind of see everything mostly within my peripheral. It's not on like the outer edges of my eyeballs. Make sure you can see all of the important HUD elements while staring at the center of the screen. Like, you should be able to see something flash down here or an alert pop up here while staring at the dead center of your screen. So I highly recommend whatever you do, whether it's a 4K monitor or it's a television screen or whatever, that you have it scaled appropriately for your eyes. Less eye strain too. It's very important for long-term gaming, and I want you all to stay healthy when you're gaming. So this is a little PSA. Okay, before we get into Weakauras, which we'll be here forever for, let's talk Big Wigs and DBM. Big Wigs and its supplementary add-on Little Wigs for dungeons, which you should grab, or Deadly Boss Mods DBM. It's really just a flavor choice. I think Big Wigs has more customizable options, but I prefer the simplicity of DBM. I also like DBM because it's what I started playing with, and to each their own. If you're looking for an out-of-the-box experience for these add-ons, Big Wigs is a little less intrusive out of the box. It's kind of low key, whereas DBM has a lot of voice alerts, which some people really love. And pick your poison, whatever you like, but I recommend running one because having the game tell you certain mechanics are going off or moves are being cast is a huge part of the game. And it's nice to know when things are happening without having to use your eyeballs, because you might be using your eyeballs for other things. And that's just true in all of esports even. So I highly recommend that you grab one of those two. And again, if you're looking for something on the subtle side, you don't want something so intrusive, I think Big Wigs is the way to go. Just make sure you also grab Little Wigs, but I'm a DBM fan, and y'all can go to town on each other in the comment section if you want about which one. They're both good. Now, Weakauras are these fantastic things. Let me make one up here that you can program. You don't have to make it complicated, but this up here will just tell me if a combat res is ready. This one tells me that I need to apply my raid buff, and that actually works for every raid buff. So, oh, yep, someone's missing it. I'll just reapply it. And this mouse cursor that shows me cast time, GCD, predictive health, empowered spells, and all of that. Yeah, that's all a Weakaura. So, Weakauras are very programmable. I highly recommend that you learn how to make simple ones through here, because simple Weakauras, you don't need any coding experience or anything like that. And you can track simple things such as your ancient teachings timing as a Mistweaver. I have one for, it's not actually Angelic Feather. I cheated this one. This one tracks Words of the Pious, a discipline priest ability where when you shield someone, you gain bonus healing, I believe, through certain moves. And it's damage, actually, I believe. And that's really powerful, and I really like having that. But I like to know how much longer it's running for, because if I'm in a ramp window and I need to refresh it, I would rather know that instead of just trying to winging it and maybe missing a few spells. So that's very important. But you can also download them. I found this awesome atonement tracker that tells me how many atonements I have out and the one that's about to expire, like the shortest atonement that I have out. Incredibly useful Weakaura for disciplined players. Makes managing how many atonements you have out and knowing how much longer your ramp window is going for very clear. So download Weakauras just so that people can share them with you. If people make boss Weakauras that help you with a boss fight or tell you when certain mechanics are going off, or provide a visual on screen to help you understand something that might be happening to you, it's great. But also, you know, it's as heavy as you want it to be. You'll see how many are loaded here. A lot of these are lightweight, but you know, you can get kind of crazy with this Weakaura thing. So grab the ones you need, experiment with them. And here are a couple of my favorites. Dungeon targeted spells. It'll say Battle for Azeroth in the Weakaura link, but I promise you, all it does is play a nice blip sound that isn't too intrusive. And whenever you are targeted by a spell, so that means when a mob is casting and looking at you, or if like, let's say it's a mechanic where the tank targets the boss, but it's a random spell cast on a random player. When the spell cast finishes and it's chosen you, you'll also hear that blip. This has saved my life. This tells me when I'm about to deal with a mechanic on a fight. I love it. It's a 10 out of 10 if you can handle just a little blip in the background. It's good. And like I said, not too intrusive. As somebody who is autistic, I'll be the first to tell you, I don't do well with super loud sounds all the time. And this is one that just flies perfectly in my sensory department. So I like this one. I also really like Ultimate Mouse Cursor. Again, it's like one of the best mouse cursors in the world. It tells you so much information, but also if you go to right mouse and, you know, like look around, you know where your mouse cursor still is. And that's very nice because you can definitely forget sometimes. And I've been in that position where I forgot and I'm like, oh no, where's my mouse? And that has saved my buns. Another one I want to go over is Omni Convoke Tracker. If you're a druid that uses Convoke the Spirits, I highly recommend this one. It's an adjusted version of one from, I think, Shadowlands, and it just shows you all the moves you use, but it makes playing Druid feel like you're using like a super in a fighting game. It's awesome. Highly recommend it. I don't know, it just makes me feel so powerful. This one, nameplates, CDs on nameplates, means enemy nameplates will have a spell CD, so you know when their next move is coming up, and it'll put an icon on a party frame if somebody is targeted with a move that we can see. Highly recommend this one. I'll have the links to all these again down below. Grab Weakauras. It's such an important add-on, and it'll make your life a lot easier. Another one we want to talk about is, oh, hi, Farrak. Another one I want to talk about is Plater. Plater is an add-on that lets you make custom nameplates. And I have a preset here that my friend Basu, I think, stole from somebody else. And then I edited Basu's setup. But this one's going to show you enemy nameplates, their health percentage, their last name, which is sometimes confusing. It'll also tell you when they're casting and who they're casting on. If there's a color for the cast bar, it's kickable. If not, it's unkickable. I love this. I really like Plater. It'll even tell you who interrupted a move, which is quite useful. Part of my problem with the Blizzard default frames is they don't give you that information. As a healer, it is so good to be like doing combat, right? You look up and you see there are 5 Aqua Spears headed towards 1 DPS in a Throne of the Tides. And you're like, oh my God, they're gonna super die. Okay, run in there and Psychic Scream, tail swipe them, leg sweep them, right? That's sort of the trick to that is you can know, oh, hey, someone's gonna get actually Giga Blasted by this move, and I can save them. So I recommend it. I recommend you grab Plater, and you can either use my profile or someone else's, but it's one of those add-ons that's like, unfortunately, I don't want to say mandatory, but it makes playing World of Warcraft so much easier until we get better frames from Blizzard. So I love that one. Let's go over details really quick, by the way. The details is these damage meters down below, and they tell you all sorts of useful information. So I can go to this Atal Dazar, and you can click and see my healing and like what healed the most and how I healed. You check auras to see what kind of buffs that I had and how long I held them for. This can be super useful for tanks. If you want to know if a tank's using their active mitigation very often, or if they didn't need to rely on their active mitigation very often, this tank was very easy to heal. And their demon spike uptime was only 35%, calcified 62%. Oh, that's actually pretty good mitigation. And given that everything else on them was pretty solid, I didn't have much of an issue healing them. That's good. But like, if you've ever played with a Guardian Druid and you're like, why is the Guardian Druid falling over? It's probably Iron Fur. Check the Iron Fur and see how often they had it up. And that can give you a better idea. You can also see how someone died. You can see what terrible things happened to someone and if it was avoidable or not. Looks like we had a Rotting Decay tick, which is pretty brutal, a Fan of Knives hit, and then a Venom Blast. So somebody could have kicked that. Maybe I could have kicked it or stopped it. Maybe they could have kicked it. But with an 83 overkill, there's a real chance that they just barely died. But you can also see, look, they took all that damage within 1 second. Okay, so almost 300k and then a killing blow in a second. Oh, okay, yeah, that's a lot of damage very quickly. That might have been a team effort to keep this person alive, but that's how you can know, like, oh, did I make a mistake there, or what do I need to know about that pull? I think the last boss of Everbloom is like terrible because the Ancient's damage profile is seemingly random and it hits everyone, and then you get hit with this raid wide that does a ton of damage. You have to heal people up between those, and if they don't have a defensive for that hit, they can just get one shot. And I had players get mad at me for that, and it's like, you died in 0.4 seconds, homie. What do you want me to do about it? So great for some to have some stuff to track some good information. You ever want to like rat on your friends who suck at kicking? You just go over here to miscellaneous, to interrupts, and you can see who did the worst. Oh, see, look, that player only had 2 kicks. Okay, we found the culprit, everyone. So that's what's nice about details. And I know we were carrying this DK, so I'm not super worried about their performance in that run, but it's important, I think, to have that kind of information. And if you're a broadcaster or you record, Details has some cool broadcast tools, even for arena players, but you can see it's checking all of my casted spells. This is great because viewers can be like, oh, how are you healing that? And they can know exactly how I ramped on Disc, exactly how I ramped on Mistweaver, how I burst healed as Preservation Evoker. It's very nice. So I highly recommend this. There's 2 forms of this as well. This is just the minimalist one that I really, really like. Another one is OmniCD. I'll have some gameplay on screen for you right now. OmniCD just tracks CDs. It's my interrupt tracker in the bottom right, and it's all those icons on the left. I'll give you my default profile to get started, but you can track anything you want on here. Healers, I highly recommend you track defensives, and the occasional offensive ability, or maybe just CC. Augmentation players, you definitely want to track defensives and some offensive cooldowns so you know when people's go window is happening. That's pretty important as well. There's a lot of cool stuff that you can do with OmniCD, so play around with that one, but it's super strong and I highly recommend it. Another small lightweight one is Astral Keys. This will just tell you who has what keys this week. So I've opened a vault on all of my characters. I still need to run on my Shaman and on my Paladin and on my Druid, but you can see I've run on other characters. I have runs done, and all this will get updated as you play. And you can tell, like, if a friend's like, hey, do you have a way crest? Like, I'm not on my way crest character, but oh yeah, my Paladin has a way crest. So I can just be like, oh yeah, I can run my Paladin's way crest for them. Super cool. Love that add-on. Another one is Mythic Plus Timer. I have some gameplay back on screen right now. It's that cute little minimalist timer on the right side of the screen. I love it. 10 out of 10. Easy to work with, easy to use. Highly recommend it. It's a good one. And then finally, just one final note before I get into my controls. If you haven't seen Narcissus, the photo add-on, I just want you to know it exists. You can do a lot with this add-on. You can take pictures. This is how I get a lot of my thumbnails. You can even like go through animations. So if I type in the word emote here, we can find a bunch of them. Let's go into the dance, and then you can pause it and you can keyframe it and find a specific spot of the dance that you like. You've probably seen this pose in a thumbnail of mine. And you can take green screen, blue screen, mask shots so that you can do all of your photo editing magic on it. You can play with lighting. It's great. And you can also take photos with your friends. I highly recommend this one. Just if you've ever wanted to take photos of your characters so that you can make some memories, or take photos of friends and whatnot. I love it. It's a 10 out of 10 from me. So let's dive into controls now, because it's about time. First and foremost, I'm going to get into some stuff that nobody likes to hear, but you have to hear this. I need to yell at you for this. Please make sure you're playing at a comfortable setup. I want to make sure that your hands aren't being twisted left and right very often. I want to make sure that you're using your wrist and your arm whenever possible for your mouse. Trackpad players rejoice. Your life is a little bit easier in that regard, but make sure your setup is comfortable. $20 to $30 can get you a decent gaming mouse or a gaming keyboard. And some of those can last a long while. If you're looking for a really good budget option, I believe they're called Red Dragon. My friend 40 uses them all the time. Not sponsored. I just straight up like, get something cheap, even if it helps you have ergonomics. Get a wrist rest if you need one. I just want you all playing the game in a way that's comfortable. If you're going to be playing hours at a time, 40 minutes in a dungeon, please be taking care of your hands, right? And let's go over those controls real quick. So I'm not actually hitting control 4. You might be going, Bowser, your hands. No, I'm fine. So I don't drag my claws over in control 4. No, what I do is I have shift and control on my right mouse on my mouse buttons 4 and 5. And so that means if I hold down mouse 4 on my mouse right now and then hit 2, I get a fire breath. So that's incredibly comfortable. It doesn't hurt at all to do that. And it lets me cast abilities seamlessly. And I have access to so many buttons with that. Some of you will have MMO mouse and can do a ton with those as well. To each their own. I recommend that you find control schemes that let you have access to your common moves and the most important things, such as interrupts, defensives, your big damage cooldowns, important trinkets are all available at your fingertips. For instance, I always have my defensive on Shift F. This is my bigger defensives, or my if I'm playing tank, it's my normal defensive as any other spec. Or roll, I have my kick always on Shift E, and those are really easy things for me to hit, so I never mess them up. So if I'm my warrior and I'm like, oh no, I'm gonna die, if I hit Shift F, I'm gonna get died by the sword. Even if I forgot what defensive that was, I got died by the sword. And so that can help you out a lot as a player, just having things in the right spots. But make sure you can do that. Mouse overcasting is available in the options. Now, if you want to do more granular things with mouse over, you're going to have to program your own macros, which isn't too bad, but you do have to put in the work with the macros. However, I just use normal mouse overcast. How mouse overcasting works is if you cast over a person, you'll target them. If you cast over a frame, you'll target the frame, including focus frames. So if your allies are hurt, you can move your mouse over to them and simply press the button and it will work. No clicking required. Now, not everyone likes doing this at first, but I highly recommend you learn how to do this. If you're worried about accidentally clicking on things or mousing over things you don't want, flick your mouse to the top of the screen or over to the side, and then whenever you're done, you can just bring your mouse back. When you're using the right mouse button, sometimes, most of the time, it seems to disable mouse over. I've had some issues, but for the most part, if I flick my mouse up here, I'm fine. And the reason you want to do this is that it's faster. It's just simply faster to mouse over a target and press the button. Now, there are people with accessibility challenges and whatnot. Controller players, I highly recommend you set targets to your D-pad potentially, or something similar where you can like press up on the D-pad and you're always hitting the tank, right? Player 1 in your group, and then player 2 is your healer, so you don't have to assign that one if you're a healer, but etc, etc. So that way, as a healer, you can very quickly access your whole party, and then no target would mean yourself, and that could be a very fast way of healing on a controller. For those of you who prefer to click cast, I don't think click casting is very good, because unless you're a professional OS player, I really don't think you're going to be that good at it compared to somebody pressing buttons. However, one way to make yourself nearly as good as a person who's doing standard mouse over stuff and pressing buttons to cast is have your teammates on 1 through 5, so that you can very easily select who you want to heal on your keyboard, and maybe a horizontal party layout would be better for you, and then press the button corresponding to the player and then click. And that might be easier for people who potentially have motor impairments in, say, their keyboard hand, and that would allow them to select players while using their better hand to do mouse overs. But at the end of the day, don't be actually clicking on a frame and then clicking on a button. You're going to be wasting so much time as a healer. DPS and tank players, some of you guys get away with click casting, and I think you're goats for it, but it's a lot harder on healing to get away with that stuff. So find ways to target players in a way that makes sense to you, that allows you to target while also casting abilities, right? Mouse over and pressing buttons, or mouse clicking and pressing buttons to target people. And as long as you have your kick somewhere nearby and you're defensive, honestly, you can make a lot work in this game. At the higher levels of play, you're going to want something where you can really utilize all of your buttons. I didn't mention it, but I do use the buttons 1 through 4, every once in a while 5. WASD to move, Q and E, R, F and G, V, X, C, and Z, and then shift and control. I sometimes use shift and control with my actual hand. Most of the time, though, I'm using it with my mouse hand. And I also use middle mouse button. And if you see F9 and F8 here, those are actually also just macros for 2 extra buttons I have on my mouse. So I can actually just press F9 like this. And please don't ask why my Path of the Tidehunter is on F9. I'm just too lazy to remove it. And it's kind of a nice icon. Come up with a control scheme so that you get to your important buttons quickly, but make sure your dispels and your defensives and your interrupts are all nearby and easy to press. And as long as you're not hurting your hands, you're good in my book. I want to make sure that you're all comfortable and happy playing this game. If you have any questions, let me know down below. If you have any accessibility concerns, let me know down below as well. I would love to find some accessibility options and add-ons that could help more players play. I'm always interested in that topic. So hit me up on Twitter, hit me up on Discord if you want any help with that, or want me to help you research that sort of thing for a specific disability. But let me know, and thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next one.